One of the questions I get most often from people researching a move to South Atlanta suburbs is about property taxes, and specifically how much they vary depending on exactly where you buy. Now, I know you clicked on a video about property taxes. You're either very responsible or you couldn't sleep. Either way, I'm glad you're here because this one actually matters to your wallet in a way most people do not realize until they are sitting at the closing table wondering why their escrow payment looks the way it does. And today we're doing a deep dive specifically on Fayette County, city by city with the actual 2025 numbers. And we are covering unincorporated Fayette, Fayetteville, Peachtree City, Tyrone, and Brooks. And we're going to talk about the exemptions available to seniors and disabled veterans because some of those are significant. And depending on where you're moving from, you are going to love what you find here. Georgia property taxes are generally lower, and Fayette County is one of the better stories in the metro Atlanta area. But within the county, there are real differences worth knowing before you decide where to focus your search. So let's get into it. I'm Daphne Bousquet with Real Broker, your South Atlanta relocation expert. Let's dive in. And before we get into the specific numbers, let me walk you through how Georgia property taxes actually work. Now, I promise this is the only math in this video. Well, mostly. In Georgia, you are not taxed on the full market value of your home. You're taxed on what is called the assessed value, which is 40% of the market value. So on a $500,000 home, your taxable assessed value is $200,000. And that matters because every rate I give you in this video is applied to that 40% number, not to the full price. Now, from there, your local government applies what is called a millage rate. And 1 mill equals $1 of taxes for every $1,000 of assessed value. So if the combined millage rate in your area is 27 mills, you take your $200,000 assessed value, divide by 1,000, and multiply by 27. And that gives you $5,400 before any exemptions are applied. Now, here's where it gets a little bit more layered. Because your total bill is not set by one government. It is set by several. You have the county rate, the school board rate, and if you buy inside the city or town limits, the city rate on top of those. And each of those governing bodies sets its own millage rate independently. And that's why two homes sitting 3 miles apart, both in Fayette County, can have noticeably different tax bills. And you will hear the term maintenance and operation millage throughout this video. So I'm going to say it a lot, so you might as well know what it means. It is the portion of the millage rate that funds day-to-day government operations. Now, for the county, that covers the sheriff's office, courts, public works, and general administration. For a city or town, it covers local services like police and parks. And for the school board, it funds teachers, buses, and building operations. Now, one more thing worth knowing before we get into the cities, and this is actually good news. I know, good news in a property tax video. Mark this timestamp. In 2024, Georgia passed House Bill 581, commonly called the Save the Homes Act. It went into effect January 1st, 2025. And what it does, it caps how much your taxable assessed value can grow each year once you have a homestead exemption on your primary residence. Instead of your assessed value rising with the real estate market, it can only increase at the rate of inflation going forward. Your 2024 assessed value becomes the base, and the future increases are tied to the consumer price index rather than whatever the market is doing. Now, in a market like ours, where values have been rising significantly, that is real protection. One thing to know as a buyer, this exemption does not transfer from your old home to your new one. When you close on a home in Fayette County, you need to go apply in person. The deadline is April 1st of the tax year you want to take it into effect. And one more thing before we get to the city numbers, because clients ask me about this regularly. And honestly, I saved it for right before the numbers because I need you awake for this part. If you receive a notice of assessment and you think your home has been overvalued by the county, you have the right to challenge it. And what you're actually challenging is not your tax rate. You are challenging the county's determination of what your home is worth, because that value is the starting point for everything else. Now, as a realtor, I can help give you a general sense of what comparable homes are selling for in your area, which gives you a data point to take into that conversation. But please know this, because this matters. If you go through the appeals process and the county reassesses your home, there's no guarantee that they come back with a lower number. It is possible they come back with a higher one. And if that happens, your taxes go up. So before you file an appeal, you want a clear picture of what your home is actually worth compared to what the county has it valued at. Now, deadlines for appeals are listed on your notice of assessment, so do not sit on it. Okay, numbers time. Stay with me here. Fayette County consistently ranks among the lowest total tax counties in the metro Atlanta area, coming in 6th lowest when compared to 18 counties of similar size and proximity. And that reputation is well earned. When we talk about property taxes here, though, we have to talk about layers. The county sets its own millage rate for general services. The school board sets a separate rate. And if you are inside any of the 4 incorporated towns, that city adds its own rate on top. And where you land within the county changes your total bill more than most people realize going in. And here's what the county itself charges in 2025. The maintenance and operation millage covering the sheriff courts, public works, and county administration is 3.763 mils. Fire services are 2.82 mils. Emergency medical services are 1 mil. And emergency 911 is 0.21 mils. I know, that's a lot of numbers. I promise they pay off in a minute. The Fayette County Board of Education held the school tax millage at 19.6 mils for 2025, and that was unchanged from 2024. And even without a rate increase, school property tax revenue is expected to rise about 4% due to rising property values across the county. And if you're buying in unincorporated Fayette County, meaning outside any city limits, those are all the layers you have. The county's own estimate for a $500,000 home in unincorporated Fayette County for 2025 is approximately $5,280 annually before exemptions, which works out about $440 a month in your escrow. Fayetteville adds a city maintenance and operation rate of 5.646 mils on top of everything else. And that rate has been unchanged since 2018. Now, because Fayetteville stayed in the House Bill 581 program, homeowners with a homestead exemption have their assessed value frozen at the 2024 base for city tax purposes. The city's finance director noted that residents with homestead exemptions should see their city tax bill look very similar to last year's, even as values have risen across the board. On a $500,000 home, Fayetteville's total annual bill comes to approximately $6,608, or about $551 a month. Of the 4 incorporated cities in Fayette County, Fayetteville comes in second highest on total taxes because of the combination of county, school, and city rates stacking together. Peachtree City is worth paying close attention to because the tax math here is more favorable than it looks at first glance. The city adopted a 2025 millage rate of 5.844 mils, down from 6.043 last year, and Mayor Kim Leonard called it the second rate reduction in 4 years. And here's the key detail, because Peachtree City provides its own fire and emergency services directly, residents don't pay the separate county fire and county emergency medical services rate that everybody else in Fayette County pays. Those two rates alone add up to almost 4 mills for homeowners in every other part of the county. So while Peachtree City has a city millage rate, the offset more than makes up for it. And on a $500,000 home, Peachtree City comes in at approximately $5,883 annually, around $490 a month. And that is very close to unincorporated Fayette, and sometimes below it depending on your specific assessed value. Tyrone gets overlooked by a lot of buyers, and that surprises me every time I see it happen. It has a strong small-town character, a real community feel, and one of the most stable tax records in the entire region. If Tyrone were a person, it would be the one who has driven the same truck since 2008, never had a car payment, and has no intention of changing. Tyrone's city millage rate is 2.889 mills, and it has been exactly that rate for 18 consecutive years since 2008. State law required the town to advertise what technically reads as a tax increase in 2025 because the rate exceeded the rollback calculation, even though the actual rate did not move at all. In real terms, the increase on a home valued at $525,000 came out to about $13.52 for the year. On a $500,000 home, Tyrone's total bill lands at approximately $6,056 annually, about $505 a month. Tyrone comes in the highest in the county overall because all the county layers apply here, including fire and emergency medical services that Peachtree City residents avoid, plus the school rate and the city rate. But for buyers who want that small-town environment with rock-solid, predictable city tax rate, Tyrone makes a strong case. And Brooks is the smallest incorporated community in Fayette County. And town leadership approaches taxation about as conservatively as you can. The 2025 millage rate is a 1.126 mills, a slight decrease from last year's 1.129. The town took the full rollback specifically to keep taxes flat for residents. The total change in the town's annual revenue as a result of that decision was about $39. That's not a typo. On a $500,000 home, Brooks comes in around $5,704 annually, about $475 a month. The city rate is low enough that the total bill is not far above unincorporated Fayette. So here's the full picture side by side on a $500,000 home before exemptions. Unincorporated Fayette runs about $5,280 a year. Brooks comes in around $5,704. Peachtree City is approximately $5,883, though residents there are not paying county fire and emergency medical services, which keeps the true comparison close to unincorporated. And Tyrone lands at about $6,056, and Fayetteville is the highest in the county at approximately $6,608. And one more note on the comparison. Every mill in your total rate equals $200 a year on a $500,000 home. So when you're comparing two properties that are a couple of mills apart in total rate, you are talking about $400 a year or $33 a month. Now let's talk about the exemptions, because this is where the story gets interesting, especially if you are approaching retirement age or if you are a disabled veteran. And if you have made it this far in the video, you have definitely earned this part. Every homeowner who occupies their home as a primary residence and applies for homestead exemption gets a base deduction of the assessed value. And that is the starting point for all of us. Apply by April 1st of the year you want it to take effect, and you do not need to reapply every year once it's in its place. One and done. Fayette County uses a tiered system for senior school tax relief, and it starts earlier than most people realize. If you turn 62 by January 1st of the tax year, your school tax exemption increases from $2,000 off the assessed value to $4,000. It's a modest bump, but it's free money if you know to apply for it. And when you turn 65, that changes significantly. You qualify for a 50% reduction in your school taxes. No income test required for the age-based qualification. Given that the school portion makes up the largest chunk of the typical Fayette tax bill at 19.6 mils, that 50% cut is worth several hundred over $1,000 a year depending on your home value. At 65, with a household Georgia taxable income below $15,000, you can qualify for a complete 100% tax exemption from school taxes. That wipes out your entire school portion. Before you look at that $15,000 threshold and assume you do not qualify, check the actual calculations. Social Security income and most retirement income sources are excluded from that figure. A lot of retirees who think they're over the limit are actually under it once the exclusions are applied correctly. It's worth a conversation with the tax commissioner's office. The disabled veteran exemption in Georgia is one that I wish more people knew about going into their home search. Any qualifying disabled veteran can receive a homestead exemption of up to $121,812 for 2025. And that amount is adjusted annually by the U.S. Secretary of Veteran Affairs. The exemption applies across every layer of the tax bill, including county, city, and school taxes. On a $200,000 assessed value, a $121,000 exemption eliminates more than 60% of your taxable base before the millage rate is even applied. And for most homeowners, that translates to thousands of actual savings. And to qualify, you need a letter from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs confirming a 100% service-connected disability rating. And you have to own a home and occupy it as your primary residence. The exemption also extends to an unmarried surviving spouse as long as they continue to occupy the home. And this is not automatic. You have to apply in person. All exemptions in Fayette County are applied for in person at the Fayette County Tax Commissioner's Office, and that's located at 140 West Stonewall Avenue in Fayetteville, Suite 110. Property taxes are one of the things that shapes where my clients end up buying. It's not always the deciding factor, but it's always a part of the conversation. And now, after this video, you are the most informed person in your friend group about Fayette County property taxes. You're welcome. Now, if you want me to walk you through this with actual homes at actual price points, that's exactly what we do on a strategy call. The link to book time with me is in the description, or you can find it right here. My free South Atlanta relocation guide is down there too. Tax rates are set annually and do change. I'm Daphne Bousquet, your local South Atlanta relocation expert, and thank you for watching.